All right, we need to talk about your janky side project. The big issue I see with most people that graduate either from a coding boot camp or from a university or are self-taught is that they want to build a side project and they don't know what to do. So what they end up doing is just kind of randomly making these lame tired projects that everybody's made, like a movie finder or a weather app or a clone of X or whatever, right? And the problem with these things is not that they don't teach you, because these can teach you a lot of really great things. In fact, at Parsity, the program that I own, we build basically all these things, or we have in the past at least. We'll be building new things in the future, but it's not like they're super novel. I mean, if you have a cohort of people doing them and other people copying this kind of approach, then you're going to naturally have a ton of the same looking apps out there. Now, what's wrong with this is it's really hard to stand out. So, what do you do when you don't know what to build and you don't want to go down another Udemy rabbit hole where you're just watching somebody type and then you're typing and then they're typing and you're typing what they type? And next thing you know, you're just a glorified typist. So, how do you avoid this trap? I'm going to show you my process for building an excellent side project when I have no clue what to build. And this could turn into a side business or just be something to teach you and keep you engaged and hopefully help you get a faster path from learning to hired. So, here we go. So, when I don't know what to build, I'm always going to start off with the data. Why the data? Because it's really boring if you make an app that doesn't have data. You can make cool little CSS animations and little transitions and things like that. But unless you have this gold mine of data, then it's hard to build something cool. Think about this. What's a problem you might have, or what's something that you're just generally interested in? Maybe you have no interests at all. Maybe you're just like, I don't really like to do anything. I just like to watch TV and, take walks on the beach. No one's going to pay you to solve that problem. No one cares about that problem. So let's try to find something interesting if we don't even know where to start. Let's just start with trying to find what data is available. So I'm literally going to type in free APIs and I'm going to look at application programming interfaces. Basically, where can I find some data at that I can use? There's tons of places. There's some better ones than others. We're going to start with a kind of a lame one. I mean, not to say this GitHub repo is lame. I really like these people that have maintained this repo. I'm just saying a lot of the public APIs in here just aren't the greatest, but it's okay. So I'm at github.com/public APIs, and I'm just going to just start digging around. I don't care about things like the weather. I think stocks are generally interesting. Blockchain. I don't know much about any of these things, by the way. I just know that other people tend to be interested in these things and they are data rich, meaning there's a lot of data about cryptocurrency, blockchain, and stocks, and it's real time data and it gets updated a lot. So you won't run out of data. For example, if you did something with a dictionary, I mean, so what are you going to do with that, right? Now, here's one that I like a lot: jobs, which is of course on everybody's freaking mind. Nonstop software developers in the whole world, it seems like, is talking about how hard it is to find a job. Not just software developers, by the way. It seems like this is a problem that stretches well beyond the realm of software engineering. So if you've heard that software developers are somehow all unemployed and looking for jobs at McDonald's, then you should talk to some salespeople, people in procurement, marketing people, artists, content creators, and ask how they're doing. So I have a few prerequisites when I'm looking at APIs. One, I don't necessarily want it to have auth because I bet you that means I'm going to have to pay. I do want it to be HTTPS, which means it's secure, so I can have this hosted on the web and people won't have to be worried about giving their information over an insecure or not secure protocol. HTTPS means Hypertext Transfer Protocol secure. If it doesn't have the S, then it's not secure. Cores basically means like, hey, can I use this from my machine, or is it going to get mad that the domains don't match? If this API is at cats.com, but my website is at dogs.com, will that create a problem? That's what cores basically boils down to: cross origin resource sharing. Can I share this resource across different origins, across different domains? So cat.com versus dog.com. Will they be able to be friends or not? If they can't, then I don't really want to use this either, because chances are I'm not going to have access to whatever URL that they're at. So let me narrow this list down by doing that. I'm going to take a look at this one, GraphQL jobs, and just see like what it looks like. Great. Great site. Okay, so I found one that looks maybe okay. Let's just see if we can make it work. So let's see if I can make this work. Let's curl this and see what happens. Oops, curl. Okay, move. Perfect. This is not great. This is the hardest part, by the way, with doing this kind of stuff. So I'm going to copy this again, throw this in here, and let's see if it. Okay, this is okay. It's in a different language. It's not great, but this is for the purposes of demonstration. So this should be the hardest part, right? You should be going through tons of APIs and then looking at which one has some data that you think could be interesting. Now you think, what can you build around this? And so this one it's decent, I guess. It's mostly in German and it looks to be just a complete amount. Oh, okay, this is not terrible actually. So this is pretty good. I like the way that this information is formatted. You know what we're going to do? We're going to test this out. So we're going to get a little scratch pad using something like CodePen and then think, what can we build around this? So I'm going to go to codepin.io and I'm going to think the data now is jobs, right? So we have job data and now we think, what can we build with job data? What should be the thing that we actually build? Well, we could build something like where a person goes on to a site and then they maybe have a little search bar or whatever and they just have a list of jobs. I mean, that could be like the dead simplest thing to do. Like that's step one. We want to think of something really simple to start off with. Then we can increasingly get more and more complex. But of course, we want to start off by just making sure this works. So what we could do is have like a job board or something like that. Like, not the coolest thing in the world, but what we do on top of that could be interesting. So what could we add to this job board? We could have things like alerts. When you have a job that matches some criteria that you want, we could have a way to save jobs on there potentially. We could have a way to incorporate something like AI, to maybe write up a resume that matches the job. AI write resume. So here's a couple really interesting directions we could go with this. And then, of course, you can do something like add authentication layer in between here and say, we need auth and stuff like that and a database. So this piece here that we're going to do, just this one little piece, just to see if this works, is the first part. And then we can decide where to go from there. And this is how a really interesting side project is born. Also, it leads us to be able to extend this beyond what we just thought of. So this could be a months-long project potentially, or at least a days-long project or weeks maybe. And maybe we build something so interesting from this job board that we end up actually putting a paywall or something in front of it. So then you can have auth, and then you could have something like Stripe or something. Stripe is a payment processor that you could have that then you could say, you know what, this is such a great site now that I have a little business. And if you want to use it, then you're going to have to actually pay me. You're going to have to use Stripe in order to get access. And then once you get access, you can get all this cool stuff I've built. But before we get there, before we make our $1,000 or $1,000,000 idea here, we should actually see if this works. So maybe we'll find out that this is completely impossible. So here's some of my awesome work right here that you may be familiar with if you're a CodePen aficionado. Things like tic-tac-toe, array practice, untitled, all the best works from yours truly. So let's make a new pin real quick. Let's make one and let's see if we can get some stuff working. So if you don't know how to do this stuff, then you should probably go to parsity.io/inner-circle or just go to parsity.io where we can teach you the basics of coding and get you to be a professional software developer, not some hack expert making janky apps across the web. But that's beyond the scope of this particular video. So we're going to use fetch and we're going to put in that URL for the API that we just found. And this could be completely wasted time, but this is how we start. We always start before we go too far. We're going to see, hey, does this work? We're going to do fetch.bin. This is going to be some res. We're going to turn that res to JSON and then .bin data. And then let's just console log the data. If we can I console log that data? I could. Okay. And let's see what we get. Save that. And then we'll move this up. We'll go into our console and let's see what we have. Okay. Oh, Feth is not defined. I hate even the reason why I'm not using a code editor, by the way, is because I just want to quickly see if this works. Look at this. Actually works. Okay. And if we wanted to use something like Postman, which you hopefully have, if you don't have Postman, it's a great tool to use to interact with third-party APIs. So I'm going to put it, or your own API. I mean, it doesn't have to be a third-party one, by the way. It can just be a URL that's going to return some data. So let's see what happens when I do this. And we're going to hit it. And look at that. We have tons of German companies, it appears. And they have some data that describes them. They have a description. This is in markdown format, or this is like an HTML format. So we'd have to somehow format this, job types, and then it's the URL. for the actual thing and it's remote. So already I'm thinking we could do some cool stuff with this data, where we could, iterate over it and stuff like that, and then begin showing it to people. So I'm not going to go through all the actual coding stuff. There's enough videos that show you how to use an API. And if you want to know how to do that, well, you can watch one of the videos I've done or one of the millions of videos out there on how to do that. What's more important, in my opinion, is where do you start? So now we go back to our drawing board. We say, cool, this actually works. And then we can begin kind of reverse engineering our path here because we know very high level what we might want to make at this point. Now we should think of the tech stack. So you should think of about 80% current technology, maybe like 20% new technology. So for me, this might be like something like Next.js, which I'm pretty familiar with at this point. I've used React quite a lot. It's kind of your standard choice for the front end. And for the back end, maybe now I want to use Python because I've never really used Python professionally. And maybe instead of Stripe, I want to use, I don't know, Braintree or something like that. And then maybe for the authorization, I want to use Clerk. And then maybe for the UI library, I want to use Tailwind as my CSS framework or something like that. So now I not only have an idea for what I'm going to build, how to extend it, but I have a mix of old and new technology. So Next.js for me, very familiar with. React, very familiar with. Python, semi-familiar with. Braintree, not really familiar with. Clerk, never used. Tailwind, I've used a lot. And maybe instead of deploying this on AWS or Vercel, maybe I'll try to deploy it, I don't know, somewhere else. I'm trying to think of what can be kind of cool to deploy this, or maybe that's not that important. So maybe I'll just go with Vercel. But now I have a roadmap, right? I have a drawing, I have a roadmap. I understand kind of what I'm going to build. Now, this could keep me busy for days. And by the time this is done, I'll either have hit a bunch of roadblocks and discovered that maybe this wasn't the best project, or I will have something that I could potentially turn into an online business. Seriously. I mean, there's no stopping you from taking something like this, extending it to the point where it actually is really, really useful for somebody, and then putting a paywall in front of it using something like Stripe, which is super simple to integrate. So hopefully that's helpful for you walking through my thought process for what I want to build when I don't know what I want to build. And you can use this, steal this. And there's also a document in the notes below the show that walk you through this process step by step by step in a Word document because I like you, but only if you're good looking. If you're not good looking, please do not look at that document. It's only for good looking software developers out there, not uggos. So ignore this if you're one of those people. Anyway, hope that's helpful and I'll see you around.